Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now we're finally starting to see a massive spike in volatility on this Bitcoin price chart as Wall Street investors just dumped a lot of Bitcoin yesterday, dumping the price of Bitcoin into this area of liquidity and wiping out a bunch of liquidity to the downside. But we now have this bullish price target that is still remaining on this Bitcoin price chart as Bitcoin is getting ready for another test of this critical line of resistance for this bullish price pattern that I'll talk about in just a moment, alongside the fact that Ethereum and Solana are both currently testing very important levels on the price chart. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, taking a look at some Bitcoin news today, because just yesterday on Tuesday, we saw a massive net outflow from the spot Bitcoin ETFs of around $342 million US dollars, leaving the spot Bitcoin ETFs just on Tuesday. And on Monday, we only saw a very small net inflow of around $102 million. So compared to the outflow of $342 million on Tuesday, of course, overall this week, it's been more bearish than bullish for the spot Bitcoin ETFs. And so obviously this means a lot of people pulled their money out of the Bitcoin ETFs, Wall Street basically dumping Bitcoin, because when, for example, Fidelity has to pay out these outflows, they effectively have to dump Bitcoin that they're actually holding to back the ETF when they have a net outflow like this. And so ultimately this is causing some sell pressure, and of course potentially one of the reasons as to why we saw a bit of a dump just over the last one day or so. But once again, right now obviously we're seeing a bit of a bounce, so potentially today when we get today's numbers in, we could see an inflow. But once again, just on Tuesday we did see an outflow causing some sell pressure. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today on the weekly time frame, the super trend indicator is still sitting in the green, indicating a larger bull market. But this weekly Bitcoin chart is still showing a lack in bullish momentum here in the weekly Bitcoin MACD. And so overall, and as I've been saying every day for the last 1 month now on the channel, we're most likely just going to chop around sideways for a little longer, roughly in between around 100k to 110k, give or take. In that range, we're likely just going to chop around sideways. And obviously over the last 1 month, that's already been playing out exactly as I've been predicting, and I continue to expect this to be the case, potentially at least for the next few weeks or so, based on the current momentum looking very flat. But obviously that sideways price range is made up of short-term bullish and bearish moves that we can trade if you're more of a day trader. But once again, zooming out, we're still basically lacking momentum. And if we're looking at this weekly Bitcoin price chart, we still have a bearish divergence to watch out for, telling us we should not necessarily expect any significant bullish momentum on the larger timeframes. And so the weekly timeframes have not really changed all that much over the last few days. And if we're taking a look at the 3-day Bitcoin price chart, for now, once again, we're still lacking momentum, showing signs of weakness, not necessarily bearish, but just looking relatively neutral, most likely going to chop around sideways for a little longer. And a lot of people don't like me saying that, because obviously choppy sideways price action is very boring if you're simply just holding Bitcoin, for example, but that is simply what is playing out. And obviously I'm saying what is most likely going to happen based on my predictions. And of course, I've been saying that for the last 1 month once again, and that's what has ultimately played out as I've been predicting. And so whether it's the popular thing to say or not, I'm just going to say what is most likely going to play out, at least based on my analysis. And once again, overall, it has been working very well, as we can see. And if we're taking a look at the daily Bitcoin price chart, we're still trading in between important support and resistance. First of all, we have some key support at around 103,000 and also at around 98,000, and a lot of resistance at around 110 to 112,000. And if we're taking a look at this daily Bitcoin price chart, currently the price of Bitcoin is potentially coming in for another test of this critical line of resistance, where we've now seen 3 perfect rejections along this line, confirming it as an important line of resistance. And this is sitting at just below 109,000, closer towards almost 108.6k. So right around there, in between roughly 108,500 to 109,000, that is the key area of resistance to focus on. And obviously, zooming further into the short term on the 6-hour time frame, we also have this area of resistance still in between 108.5k to 109,000, which is the same area of resistance I've been talking about every day since before we saw these perfect rejections from this area. So once again, still expect a lot of resistance in that area. And if we were to see a breakout above 109,000, 109,000. In that situation, expect more resistance at around 110,000 to 110.5k. But ultimately, if we break out above around 109,000, once again, that is the key level to break out above, because if we break out above that level, that would confirm this falling wedge pattern, which is statistically a bullish price pattern. And of course, that will set up a bullish price target if we first confirm a breakout above ideally 109,000. But obviously, we're still waiting for that potential breakout here that is not currently confirmed, which means the possible price targets for this pattern are not currently in play. And in case you're wondering, this line of support for the falling wedge is sitting at just above $100,000 per Bitcoin. And if we're taking a look at this 12-hour Bitcoin price chart, we're now finally starting to see a bit of a spike in the historical volatility indicator. And obviously, I talked about this indicator in my last video here on the channel. And what I said yesterday was that we saw a major drop off in the volatility just recently, meaning we saw a period of very low volatility over the last 1 week or so. And usually when this happens, we're just about to see a lot more volatility start picking up in the price of Bitcoin. And of course, this does not necessarily tell us if it's going to be bullish or bearish volatility. It just means that we're currently in the calm before the storm and to expect a lot more volatility. And now, just in one day, this is already starting to play out. We're now starting to see an increase in volatility. And based on the current trajectory in the historical volatility indicator, if this continues in this direction, ultimately, this is suggesting that we could see more volatility in the price of Bitcoin over the coming days, or most likely over the next 1 week or so. Expect some more wild swings in the price as the most likely outcome here. But remember, this is talking about the shorter term moves, these short-term bullish and bearish movements. But overall, we're still within this much larger sideways price range. Once again, if you're zooming out to say the weekly time frame here, we're basically in a bit of a sideways price range, also visible here on the 3-day time frame. And so obviously, it's important to understand the difference between the different time frames, because each time frame gives us a different perspective of what is happening and what could happen over a certain period of time, rather than just looking at the short term or just the long term. And so once again, the short term, the small time frames can flip between bullish and bearish pretty much every day. So they always flip around, but the larger time frames rarely flip. They take a lot longer to actually change directions. And so this is why I've been saying expect more choppy sideways price action on the larger time frames over the last 1 month, and why I continue to say this as the most likely scenario in the coming weeks. But of course, if we're talking about the immediate short term, you'll notice that in these videos, I'll flip between bullish and bearish much more often on the smaller time frames, because that is simply the nature of the short term, the small time frames. And so with that being said, taking a look at this 6-hour Bitcoin price chart, and of course, over the last 1 day, we actually saw a fake out to the downside. We saw just one 6-hour candle close slightly below 106,000, below this key area on the price chart. But then the very next candle close, when we came back in for a confirmation, we actually confirmed it back above 106,000. And then the very next 6-hour candle close after that, we confirmed back above 107,000, ultimately invalidating the break to the downside. And so if anything, what this has told us over the last 1 day is that we're still looking very neutral right now, not bullish, not bearish, very neutral, because the moment we confirm a break below a key level or confirm a breakout above a key level on the price chart, we're not really seeing a lot of follow through. We're not seeing a massive bullish move after a breakout above key resistance, or a massive bearish move after a break below key support. We're just basically bouncing around sideways, as we could see. And so honestly, based on what's just happened over the last 1 day, I'd not be surprised if we continue just bouncing around relatively sideways in this sideways price range, in between roughly 105, 106k is the support now, and once again around 108.5k to 109,000 as still strong resistance. But remember, this shorter term sideways price range is really in between a much larger sideways price range, as we could see, in between roughly 100,000 and 110,000. And as always, not financial advice, but an example of a trading strategy where you can make a lot of easy profits in this exact type of price action here would be, for example, a grid bot trading strategy, which is basically an automated trading strategy where you can set a certain price range. So let's just say in between roughly 100,000 to 110,000. And then in the lower half of the range, it has a bunch of buy orders. And in the upper side of the range, it has a bunch of sell orders or short short position orders or long position orders in the lower half if you don't want buy orders. So you can, of course, do a leverage trade, for example, or just spot trades. And so ultimately what that does is the moment we see a dip like this, it buys some Bitcoin to the downside. And then the moment we see a pump, it sells that Bitcoin along the way towards the upside. And basically the moment we take out a buy order, it replaces that with a sell order just above the price, and vice versa. If we take out a sell order, it places a new buy order just below the price, so that you're ultimately profiting on all of this volatility while we're just bouncing around in a sideways price range. And you can actually have that set up and running completely automatically in the background. So while you're doing something else, or while everyone else out there is getting bored with crypto right now, bouncing around sideways, you can make a lot of easy passive profits flowing in through a gridbot trading strategy. And if you want to know more information and have a full tutorial on how to actually do that, I'll leave a link to that video that I made a while ago here on the channel at the end of this video. So stick around to the end of the video if you want to basically get into that video on how to make a lot of easy passive profits during this type of market right here. But first, taking a quick look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map. And over the last one day, with Wall Street and the ETFs dumping Bitcoin, obviously we saw that pullback in the price, and we've now wiped out the downside liquidity that was building at roughly 106,000. So like I said in my last video, that was a short-term price target, which is now taken out. And we still have a lot of liquidity above the price at close to 109,000. And so this is also potentially one of the reasons as to why we're seeing a bit of a short-term bounce, because usually liquidity kind of acts as a magnet, pulling the price towards where there's a lot of liquidity, especially if it's relatively close to the price, like this 106K level. And so right now the price is potentially getting pulled towards that 109K level. But remember, even if we have certain price targets in play, we cannot ignore important points of support and resistance. So once again, in between roughly 108.5K to 109,000, so just underneath 109,000, we have a lot of resistance starting there based on this area here, and also based on this descending line of resistance on the daily Bitcoin price chart. And so those are the key levels that I'm watching for the price of Bitcoin on the Bitcoin price chart, and of course, short-term price targets and things like that. But overall, honestly, just expect some more choppy sideways price action as one of the most likely outcomes here moving forward. But remember, you can make a lot of easy profits during choppy sideways price action. So don't complain about this. This is easy, free money that you can be making right now. And if you want to get set up, ready to go to take advantage of these trading opportunities in the price of Bitcoin or any other crypto, personally, I'm taking a lot of crypto trades over on BTNX. So I'll make sure to leave a link to BTNX below this video in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link, you can get some massive trading bonuses over here, like for example, up to $45,000 in trading bonuses, and also deposit bonuses. Like for example, if you deposit just $1,000, you get a $200 bonus into your BTNX account completely for free just by depositing and trading crypto using that link. And in case you're wondering, BTNX is a no KYC exchange, which means you can access it from basically any country in the world without needing any KYC. But as always, check your local regulations when it comes to trading crypto. And for whatever reason, if you don't want BTNX as an exchange, there's also 2bit as another option out there, another exchange that I also trade on. So I'll also make sure to leave a link to 2bit below this video. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here, where you can also claim some massive trading bonuses. And so you can get up to $50,000 in trading bonuses, and also a $30 sign up bonus and a 20% deposit rebate up to a max of 200 USDT. So for example, if you deposit just $1,000, you get a $200 bonus into your 2bit accounts. But once again, only if you use that link. So if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, or getting prepared for the next trading opportunity, you might as well get set up ready to go using the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim those massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And in case you're wondering, 2bit is also a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a look at Ethereum on the daily time frame, and Ethereum is currently retesting a critical level on the price chart, and so far we are finding a bit of short-term support around that level, and that's sitting at close to 2.4K, really at around 2380 to 2.4K as the key support to focus on. And so once again, we're continuing to find support at that area, which is at least some good news here in the short term. But overall, we're lacking momentum in the short term, looking very neutral, bouncing around sideways. Like I've been saying for Bitcoin, once again, we're seeing something very similar for Ethereum. And ultimately, if we were to confirm a breakback below roughly 2380 to 2.4K with candle closes below that level, in that situation would likely see a drop down towards roughly 2.1K like what we saw previously. And obviously that's what I talked about since before we saw that previous move down towards pretty much exactly 2.1K. But in the immediate short term, we're basically in a bit of a short term sideways price range in between roughly 2380 to around 25.50. So in between roughly 2.4k to 2.5k as the short-term sideways price range. But overall, we're in a much larger sideways price range, as we can see. So not much has changed over the last one day. We're just testing a key level. And ultimately, on the daily Ethereum price chart here, we still have a bearish divergence to watch out for, because for now, we've not really confirmed a strong invalidation signal to properly invalidate this bearish divergence. And so overall, just expect more of a sideways consolidation as the most likely outcome here in the short term, at least for the next few days moving forward. And if we're taking a look at the price of Solana on the daily time frame, it's a similar situation for Solana. We're now testing a key area on the price chart, which was previous strong resistance and also previous strong support, and is currently acting as important support for the price in between roughly 143 to 146. And obviously in my last video just yesterday, I talked about a retest of this area, and at least so far, we are currently finding some support in this area, which is some good news in the immediate short term. But if we were to see a confirmed break with candle closes back below around 143, obviously that would be bearish price structure, and at the very least would likely see a move down towards around 139, give or take. But honestly, if we see a break below around 143 with confirmations that candle closes below 143, that would significantly increase the probability that we could see a retest of this local low. So at least down towards around 132 based on the candle closes, possibly even down towards 125 to 126 if we first break below around 143 to 146. But remember, at least for now, we're still finding some support in this region. And we also have a bit of an inverse head and shoulders pattern possibly forming here. But ultimately, in order for this to potentially confirm, we need to soon see a bounce here, and over the next few days, see a recovery back up towards roughly 155 to 156. And then we need to see a confirmed breakout above that level on the price chart in order to potentially confirm an inverse head and shoulders pattern, which of course would be a bullish price pattern setting up a bullish price target. But before that possible bullish price target, there would also be this significant point of resistance here at around 167. So that would be the immediate price target if we first break out above roughly 155. But overall, with Bitcoin showing signs of weakness, lacking momentum, and basically bouncing around sideways, with Ethereum doing the same in the short term, it would not be surprising if Solana plays out similar price action, just somewhat bouncing around sideways, seeing a bit of short-term bullish and short-term bearish moves, but ultimately looking relatively neutral, not doing all that much. And if we're taking a look at the price of XRP on the 12-hour time frame, it's a similar situation for XRP. Obviously, we're lacking momentum to either direction. Yes, we're seeing short-term bullish moves and short-term bearish moves, but ultimately we're just bouncing around sideways in a sideways price range, as we could see, and that's in between roughly $2.05 to $2.35. So we have important support in between $2.05 to $2.10 as the support, and important resistance in between roughly $2.31 to $2.35. And so basically just continue to expect the price to bounce around in this sideways price range at least over the next few days, possibly even a period of weeks. And obviously that's exactly what we've seen over the last few weeks, as we can see. And I'm telling you, during this type of price action, a grid bot trading strategy is perfect. You can make a lot of easy profits in the crypto market just by setting it up and have it running in the background, completely automated. You can make a lot of easy profits during a market just like this when it's just bouncing around within a certain sideways price range. But as always, that's not personal financial advice because I don't know your personal financial situation. I'm just letting you know a very profitable trading strategy that would be the case right now based on the current price action. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the 12-hour time frame, it's the same situation for Chainlink. We're just bouncing around sideways in between a sideways price range. So in between roughly 1260 to around 1370, give or take, as the support and resistance. So first of all, we have an area of support in between around 1260 to 1280, and an area of resistance in between roughly 1360 to 1380. And we can clearly see that the price of Chainlink, like a lot of cryptos I've been talking about in this video so far, is lacking momentum to either direction, at least for now. Obviously, when we're seeing bullish price action, we don't see a lot of follow through towards the upside, the same as when we see bearish price action. We're not seeing a massive crash or anything, just a bit of a short-term dump, a bit of a short-term bearish move, or a bit of a short-term bullish relief, but ultimately lacking momentum to either direction. recession, bouncing around in a sideways price range. And so this will likely continue at least over the next few days, possibly a period of weeks, lacking momentum based on the current market once again. And if we're taking a look at the 4-hour time frame, technically speaking, we still have a bearish divergence to watch out for, and a bearish divergence tells us to not expect significant bullish momentum. So yes, we could see short-term bullish moves here and there, but ultimately we're showing signs of weakness, and overall a bearish divergence plays out in the form of either a short-term pullback or a bit of choppy sideways price action as the most common outcomes, the most likely outcomes here in the short term. And so overall, those are my expectations, those are my predictions for all of these crypto assets and the key levels that I'm watching for on the price charts. And once again, if you want to get set up, ready to go to take these trading opportunities, check out the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim those massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And if you want to know how you can easily profit in the crypto market, no matter if the price is bullish, bearish, or chopping around sideways, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, but the video in the bottom left is the one that you should watch right now, shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.